Uh, Welcome to the afternoon sessions. We have seen a whole lot of stuff. We just left one talking about using VR to climb inside molecules. So, we were doing a lot of very macro things. Now we're going to bring things back to sort of the real world. And I'm very fortunate to have Dr. Juan Cata from the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Texas, and Christina York, CEO of Spellbounder, to talk about sort of their approach to treating pediatric oncology patients. So take it away, you two.
Hi, everyone. Juan, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Okay. Thank you, Christina and Mark, for having us or having me this time from my office in my lab. But I'm an associate professor of anesthesiology at MD Anderson. I've been here for already 10 years, plus my fellowship is going to be almost 20 years. And I've been working with Christina for at least a year or so now through one of my former students who now works with Christina as a CRO, and Jenny was instrumental to put us together. Happy to be here.
And I'm Christina York, founder and CEO of Spellbound. I've been in technology for about 20 years, primarily building products or building product teams, and primarily working in healthcare and higher education during my career. My expertise is in user experience, and I started Spellbound in 2016 after my youngest daughter had a traumatic experience. She had put something in her ear she shouldn't have, and because she was 3 at the time and terrified, she didn't hold still, and was therefore the hospital we were at used restraints and eventually sedation so that they could simply use tweezers on her ear. So that was a moment where I really had an aha moment about helping pediatric patients through their healthcare journey without trauma. I'm going to start by giving a little bit of a background about Spellbound so people kind of understand the context the rest of the conversation's in. Then I'm going to hand over to Juan to talk about a grant that we received about the NIH and the research that's going on around this augmented reality. And then we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit with questions after that. So Spellbound helps hospital care teams create moments of magic for children. So we do it with a suite of augmented reality tools designed around the pediatric patient journey for procedures and hospital stays of varying length. We seek to reduce unnecessary sedations, reduce perception of pain, reduce recovery period, all through increased movement, using augmented reality, as well as we aim to ultimately increase hospital efficiency using augmented reality. Our focus is right now on pediatric oncology. Those children with cancer have a lot of procedures, a lot of hospital stays, some long, and a lot of issues around pain and certainly sedation. And so I was actually going to think about showing a brief little video here while I kind of explained about our product. And so it is not showing the thing I wanted to show, is it? All right, can everybody see? Mark, I don't know, hopefully you can see the YouTube video that's playing right now in the background. So when we think about the pediatric patient journey, we think about preparation for procedures, so creating 3D simulations. We are mobile first, that's primarily for accessibility. We also do provide augmented reality for procedural support. It can be simple things like distraction therapy for short procedures like needle-related medical procedures or catheterizations. A way of introducing patients to the hospital environment. We can use wall decals or small handheld objects to add augmented reality to. But the whole concept is to add augmented reality to the hospital environment to really change perception and get patients more engaged with less trauma. This one I'm going to call out right here is a very early prototype, but it's our digital scavenger hunt. It's called Arise. And Juan's going to tell us about the grant around this, but the concept is adding augmented reality to the walls of the hospital so that patients are challenged with missions and other things that require them to visit these areas of the hospital, whether it's wall decals or existing artwork in the hospital, but for patients to be able to move around the hospital safely, visit what we call digital destinations, forcing them to get up and walk after surgery. I'm stopping the share there. I think that, sorry, I'm having switching problems now. When we think about augmented reality and applying it in the hospital through mobile devices using targets that someone saw in the video, and we also do it without targets. But Juan's going to tell us a little bit more specifically about the one augmented reality product that we have. Not only it's already in use at MD Anderson, but a handful of hospitals across the country already. But it was awarded a fast track NIH grant. Juan, do you want to tell everybody about that grant?
Yeah, so thank you, Christine. I think that helped me quite a bit on explaining or giving a background of the project. So basically when Jenny contacted me and asked me whether I would consider looking at the product or augmented reality, I took it with a very open-minded approach. Although I am not considering myself an expert in augmented or virtual reality, I knew that it was a cool technology and we could find a good place for it. So the first thing that we talked to Jenny, or she told me, was that the company was working with pediatric oncology patients. And immediately my first reaction was, can we distract these PD patients or these children from, I would say, a very difficult experience or journey that they have, most of them, when they have a surgery, mostly to aggressive surgeries to remove a tumor or part of their body. So here at MD Anderson, we were always looking at how can we speed up the recovery of these patients. So one of the limiting factors that we have in the recovery of PD patients, or any patient, in fact, is sometimes they are exposed to large amounts of any analgesic or any painkiller. And the problem here for me was opioids in particular. Mostly in pediatrics, because they are going to, or PDs, they have pain, they request medication, and sometimes, most of the time, the first option for severe or moderate pain is an opioid. So from there, we are starting a cycle that if these children are exposed to for an unknown period of time to opioids, then they potentially could become having opioid use disorder. And this is a very difficult problem that we have as a society, and perhaps ethically, how can we reduce the most powerful analgesic or painkiller that we have efficiently, but at the same time in a manner that we could control it in the hospital. So that's why I said, okay, I start reading about virtual reality, augmented reality, what imaginary or biofeedback can do in the brain. That has been shown to be effective in some settings. So I talked to Jenny, and I said, yes, let's have a look at it. So the idea was to have a patient of populations that we know that they're going to have pain, and basically give it the the augmented reality tool or the iPad and tell him, go and hunt the figures or whatever you have in the room or outside the room. So the goal here is that the more exposed they get to this augmented reality technology, they will get more distracted again, and then reduce perhaps how much opioid they use and how much, and improve and get them out of the bed as much as we can. Initially, I think that I was a little bit skeptical, but again, when I started reading, said, you know, let's go and do it. And the NIH, I think that they love it. I think that the reason that they love it is because we have no good ways to reduce opioid use and improve at the same time patient experience, mostly in a very vulnerable patient population like pediatrics in general after the surgery, but particularly those children that have cancer, which they have a very rough sometime period after the surgery. And that's how the concept evolved. We applied to the NIH. We went through a couple of revisions and speaking with the FDA and all those things. And finally, we got granted. So at this time, we are waiting for the final approval here at MD Anderson, and we're going to launch the project soon. We hope that Texas Children, which is across the street, also will join us in this. The importance of having a specific children hospital is to see if we can generalize our practice outside. Because it's not only what we do here at MD Anderson, but can we help other folks, other children outside MD Anderson? And that's been the journey. And you know, I think that now we are expanding a little bit beyond the children with cancer to other opportunities that we have in patients with cancer. So that's how we started, I guess, Christina, and that's how we are moving.
Yeah. I know we haven't gotten started yet, Juan, but what kind of outcomes are you hoping for, or milestones are you hoping for that that augmented reality will accomplish with the children? You talked about a little bit about mobility and pain, but are there other specific things that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think that the major outcome would be, first of all, there are several outcomes that we can put it related or not related to the grant. But I think that the major outcome would be, first we deliver the technology, and I think we can, because we are doing it outside of a actual grant or actual study. And the second is, can we extend this and have a longer impact in our patients? Can we reduce opioid here in the operating room, but that can translate into long-term opioid use? Can we safely do it, for instance? Or can we measure the distance that they are going to be traveling when are they hunting their objects? And the reason that is important as an outcome is because the faster we improve their mobility, they are more likely to go home sooner as well. It's not that we want to get him out of the hospital as soon as we can, but we need to do it safely, and they need to be comfortable. But the same technology that we are using in our nursing floors, we can use it at home. So we can give it the iPad and say, keep doing what you're doing at home. So because it would be a bit of disconnected if everything that we start here stop at home. So our goal is a short term in terms of a hospital stay, instead of opioid reduction, instead of patient satisfaction, quality of recovery, quality of life of patients, but also beyond that period. And we are going to call the patient and ask the parents all those questions, with the idea that after completing this phase one, not a phase one as a safety trial for any medication, but a phase 1 in terms of a grant handling, then we can move to a larger study and show the efficacy of augmented reality product.
Yeah, and that's in the controlled trial. You know, that was one of the big strengths for us with why we chose mobile augmented reality in this specific case, is to provide that continuity between hospital and home. Particularly for cancer patients who are often making many trips between hospital or clinic, and then continuing their journey or their recovery at home, and providing those tools for not only the children to use, but for parents to be able to leverage during that time. When you think about this concept of mobile augmented reality, Juan, you know, are there other benefits when you think about the healthcare journey? And maybe like, is augmented reality a good fit, a good technology for this?
I think that it is certainly non-invasive. So this is the first thing that we can do, is to try something that it will minimize any physical intervention in pediatric mostly. Second is becoming more available to the public. So implementing the technology is not like, you know, putting a robot in Mars. It is here, it is ready to be used. So I think that it will help our patients. And then from there, we can build in other areas in the hospital or healthcare, because this is only a first step. We've been using augmented reality somehow, but most of the time on the doctor side, can we do things for ourselves better? But we have been somehow limited, except for anxiety in pediatric patients. We have limited the use on what patients can do with the technology. And I think that's the other important concept here, because once we can show that we are effective in delivering, we are effective we have efficacy in our primary or secondary outcomes, then other things will come in the future.
Yeah, and you've alluded to this a couple of times, which I think is a great point. Like, it's a starting point, but you know, oncology is also a starting point too. Like, think about cardiology patients or any general surgery patients, any kind of patient that undergoes a procedure that requires inpatient recovery, but physical therapy and, you know, physical medicine and rehabilitation, but also for chronic and long-term care patients that often are not up and moving and have difficulty in just engaging. It's, I think, an emotional or mental issue as well, like mental health issue, I should say. You know, I see augmented reality, particularly right now in this iteration, mobile augmented reality, as really becoming ubiquitous. You know, whether it's a patient, a pediatric patient or their family, or doctors or nurses or therapists, I see it as very accessible across the healthcare journey, and able to be quickly taken up and quickly used when it is appropriate, and not used when it's not appropriate, right? So in terms of like other abilities, I mean, of course, it's not just for kids. We focus on kids, but do you see other applications for this as well?
Well, you know that we've been talking with other surgeons to implement inside the operating room. So I think that, as you said, we can think in trying to improve the journey of a patient from the moment that they are getting surgery to extend it outside the operating room. So I think that the technology is not limited to one place, as you said, to one patient population. Again, it's such non-invasive thing that with good randomized controlled trials or with good studies, we can always test whether we can improve the journey of our patients. And that's, in my opinion, the ultimate goal here is, can we improve their experience in the hospital? Can we make suffering less? Can we bring the next patient that is needed 10 rounds or 6 rounds of chemo and make it not that painful for them? And I think that's the ultimate goal. And if we can achieve it with a technology like this, everybody benefits from it.
Yeah. And I think I just want to address, you had said something earlier too about vulnerable populations and pediatrics being that. And I just really want to point out, and I'm no expert, Juan, you can jump in here, but like there's been a lot of work done with pain management for adults and the importance of getting up and walking after surgery, even small things that seem very obvious where the emphasis has not been in pediatrics to do those things. And that's why this population is so vulnerable, just because there isn't a lot of resources and tools out there, and that exploring these low risk opportunities, particularly around augmented and virtual reality, is a very great way to start in the pediatric space. Juan, would you, what do you think about that assessment I just gave?
Well, I think the problem, one of the biggest problems is we have assumed for a long time that after a certain age, physiologically, most kids are adults, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody would say, well, 10, 12, they are small adults. But that might be true for some physiological parameters, but psychologically, they are still in development. So I think that the disconnection between the pain treatment that exists for adults and for children is humongous. Even only few people in the country or in the world seriously take pediatric pain as a specialty. So, and the reason is it's very hard to do it. It's very hard to study. And I guess that not many people want to go in that direction. But it's a patient population that is highly vulnerable to things that might experience at early age that continue in the future. So that's what I thought. Testing AR in this patient population was fairly important because there are not many things. And even folks who do cognitive and behavioral therapy are struggling when they approach pediatric. So it's not the same to do hypnosis, for instance, in a pediatric patient than in adult. You need a cooperative patient to do this kind of CBT therapies. So so AR could bridge that part of the gap in what we have and what we need, or what we know that we need to improve the journey of patients in the operating room. And not only those who have a surgery, pediatric who have surgery, this can be, as I said earlier, implemented in those pediatrics that come for even a minimally invasive procedure like a bone marrow aspiration. Highly painful procedure, they get it multiple times, they need to go and under anesthesia most of the time, and several times in their journey as a patient. So the technology can be implemented outside the pure surgical population as well.
Yeah. Yeah, augmented reality, I mean, the ability to change the perception for the patient is the power here, right? Because you can't change the reality of their treatment. You can't change the reality of their situation, but you can change their perception as they go through it. And when you mentioned like cooperativeness, right? And this can be a big issue for kids, whether it's, simple things like complying with their physical therapy activities afterward, or even just like letting the nurse help them get up and walk after surgery. So we think about all those moments where it's very difficult for a child to just naturally comply because either they don't understand, or they're afraid, or they're in pain, or, there's so many reasons why. And children many adults feel helpless as an adult that's been through many medical procedures, but children have there's no control for a child going through the healthcare journey. And sometimes augmented reality can give them that semblance of control, where they can control that virtual world around them, and engage with it in the way that they choose and at their pace. And I think that's a very powerful part when you talked about cooperation, like for the technology to be adaptive to that child, is really important.
Yeah, and the other thing is when I'm not against virtual reality, but what I like here is they don't need to have a sort of a heavy goggle thing that, yes, they are experiencing something, but they are not at the same time in the reality that we all live. So we all live, to put it that way. It can be raining outside. They can see the rain at the same time. They can go on a hunt. So they don't need to have a dark thing put in their head, which first of all is heavy for them. They might be prone to have falls or an injury because they are not seeing, they are moving. While they can do it at home when they are physically not impaired. If you are recovering from surgery, I am not sure that I want my daughters to have something in their head that they're not being able to interact first with somebody else, but second, see surroundings in terms of their safety. And that's the other thing that I like, that they can be with their iPad, with their phone, going and hunting at the same time. They have this connection with other providers or their families at the same time.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of positive things going on recently too. For us, it's very positive that the NIH and NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, awarded us this grant. And I see more backing, not only of these institutions like NIH and NIDA to back technologies like augmented reality, but I'm seeing other things come through, like the FDA this year approved the first prescription video game for children with ADHD. And so we're starting to see more and more backing in terms of funding to study and to learn and to understand. But then now even moving it into mainstream. What do you think do you have any insights, Swan, in terms, and maybe it's just back to the safety and low risk part of it, but I definitely see a trend in terms of these institutions backing the study of these things. Do you see that continuing in the future?
I think it will continue because, first of all, there are two things here. One of them, we are learning about our own mistakes as physicians and trying to fix everything with a single magic pill. Biology is more complex than that. So, and the second thing is technology is evolving so rapidly that what AR was 10 years ago is nothing like it is today, and it is not going to be the same probably 5 years from here. So what these big funding sources are seeing is they have, again, sort of a very fast approach to solve some problems, but I'm not sure completely solve the problem, but at least provide some help. When you think that we are getting approved for cancer drugs within 3 years, when typically it was 10, 15 years to get a cancer drug get approved. And that is considered a very fast approach in cancer therapy. You can do this with technology in a much faster way because, again, as long as it's well tested and is relatively is safe to the patients and relatively non-invasive, the FDA, the NIH, the DOD will support that, and for a lot lower cost that you can imagine. Because again, technology is not going to get more expensive. Technology is going to always go down in terms of cost. So for the NIH and for FDA or DOD, instead of millions and millions and millions and millions and millions for a pill that might not help your pain, you know, they're trying to think, well, probably that is not the whole solution. That is part of it. Yes, we need time to develop new pharmacological therapies, but at the same time, if you invest in technology, you can get some very good results in a shorter period of time, basically with not much costs.
Yeah. You know, as
Christina,
someone,
I have a question.
yes.
Correct. So you've had experience with building UI, UX kind of stuff for, I presume, mostly adults. Is that right?
Yes.
And I guess, how is it, and I noticed you got, it looks like you got some of the targets behind you, basically,
yes.
on the wall, yes. So how has it been designing for kids? I mean, are they intuitive? Do they get it? Or is it hard to get them to understand? Or like, how does that work?
There's two levels. I mean, the first is that, yes, designing for children is different than designing for adults. And so even how long their arms are, how far they hold the device from themselves, or how far would they might stand away from a target, how they would how can they hold a device and interact with it in 3D space, that is all different for a normal child than a normal adult. But we're also designing for children who are, right, you know, primarily, right, I mean, children who are in hospitals. So, you know, while our focus is on pediatric oncology, we also have children with in there for other reasons using the Spellbound's augmented reality. These kids might have other limitations, like they might not be as mobile as they normally are. They might be under medication that makes them dizzy or make them not feel well. You know, they might, you know, sometimes we go in and see patients using it and they might have an eye patch. They might like not have binocular vision. There might be other limitations to their ability to interact with the technology. And so we actually have to design for those as well, to not just for children, but for children that are not themselves. I'll just say that as a blanket statement. You know, they might be scared or under duress or in pain, and people interact differently with anything when they're in those conditions. So I think a lot of it, our learning is coming from partnering with organizations like MD Anderson and other hospitals that we work with across the country to really, as a technology company, to have a deep understanding of that patient journey. What's it like for those patients? What's it like for those clinicians? And what insights can we draw from that can, you know, tell us about performance? How performant does the AR need to be in reality? You know, how accessible does it need to be when we think about providing alternate ways of interacting with things based on limitations of the patient, or being able to, in the concept of leveling up, you know, as a patient recovers, at first they might be laying down, then they might be sitting, and then they might be making short walking trips to the bathroom, and then finally they might be walking down the hallway in the hospital. When we think about those different levels, like how can we level up patients in terms of interacting with that augmented reality over that time period? So that all adds up to just general accessibility and very broad application so that it can adapt to patients wherever they are in their journey.
Yeah, I would think that's the amazing thing about this, is that you not only can you gamify a lot of this stuff, you know, if you walk down the hall, you get extra points and so forth, but you can also track the data, like because of gyroscopes and time on the app and so forth, you can actually see, you know, progress, I would presume, in what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's really replacing self-reported data in many cases. So like that nurse coming in and asking, did you get up and walk for 15 minutes like I asked you, or what, you know, walk down the hallway, or have that nurse like walk with that patient and be with them so that they have eyes on the patient. So I think a lot of times that behavioral data that we are collecting about a patient interacting with this 3D environment is very useful. And as part of the grant, we are tracking some of this stuff and being able to report it back to Dr. Cotta and his team, and to see like what kind of insights can we make about this in combination with the clinical data that they're collecting.
And just to be clear, the grant is more about reducing opioid use or mobility or both?
Both.
Both.
It's about
Okay,
using
great.
mobility and distraction to reduce opioid use. Yes.
Got it. Okay, very good. No, that's very good. Yeah, no, I think, one of the other things that I'd be interested in Dr. Carter, your opinion about this, but it seems like a lot of these mobile technologies, remote sensing, obviously COVID has come, telemedicine is the thing, we're all, got remote digital thermometers now in our homes and things, but it does seem like there is a big movement among clinicians and others to enable, not only therapy, but also sort of monitoring and getting people to do outside of the clinical setting. And I think that's one of the beauties of the approach you're talking about is because you could do this mobility walking down the hall of the hospital, or you could send the family home with stickers and tell them, move these every couple of days around the house and make the kid walk around the house. So, and you can track all that stuff. So I think that would be also very helpful.
Yeah, that's exactly how we are thinking this. So one day the PDs, the children will find their object in a wall here, the following day in a different day, in a different wall, and then try to engage them in their recovery as much as we can, so they get, first of all, out of the bed as soon as they can, for many reasons. And then, as Christina was saying, our nurses will also be more, it will be helpful for them as well, because sometimes it's very difficult for a nurse or a physical therapist to bring the patient out of bed for many reasons, being pain, being they don't want because they feel sad or depressed, for any reason. So this the technology could enhance their experience with the patient itself. So, and then next time that they are bringing the patient out of bed, is a different connection with the patient. So it could potentially improve the care for them as well. And then it's possible that in the near future, you can set alarms, you can set a bunch of other things that it will tell you how patients are doing in the journey. And these alarms will tell you the patient is doing great, or the patient today is not doing that great. So we already have in the recovery room, recovery rooms or on the nursing floors, devices that they know exactly when you're moving, how much you're moving, what is your blood pressure, how much time you spend in a certain range of blood pressure. So this will integrate to that sort of data once it is available. So this opportunity for us is just the beginning of how then we can move into other areas.
That's good. How did you, quick question, how did you all meet? Because you're in Texas and Michigan, and how did you guys find each other?
Well, I think it's, as I said earlier, Jenny Choi. Jenny she was a summer student with me in my research group when she was a second-year student at UCSD. And we have a couple of papers together, and she did an awesome job, and she is a super bright woman. So one day she sent me a message or an email. Every year she would say, hey, now I'm in Michigan, I'm doing this and that, and doing my PhD. And one day I thought, well, this is another email that she's going to say that she's doing great. And she said, no, I'd really like to talk to you about this technology. And I found out that she was working with Christina, and that's how we met.
Yeah. So our company is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so we have the University of Michigan health system right in our backyard, and Jenny was a part of it and had seen us somewhere and just contacted us. So now Jenny is our chief research officer and has coordinated all this research. And so as an early stage startup, some people will say, what's going on with that? You have a chief research officer. And for us, I think it's absolutely critical because not only because grant funding is very useful in terms of product development and other things to really get off the ground and providing evidence of efficacy, but providing relationships where as a tech company, we can really learn and get deep insights from the people who are working with patients every day. And so Jenny has been invaluable, and having that role in the company early on has been I think a huge help for us.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you both from Texas and Michigan and here in Baltimore. Thank you both for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us and to tell us about your program. I think this is fascinating, and I think it's got, you got years of work ahead of you, but clearly you could have a huge impact on pediatric healthcare. That's fantastic. So again, thanks so much for all your time. And do you mind if we share emails and stuff with the audience? Is that okay?
Please
Great,
do.
fantastic. So
Please
the
do.
videos will be, we're recording, and the videos will be available, I think, in a few days or so. But no, appreciate your time. Appreciate you being with us today. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Bye, Christina.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye,
Mark.
everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Next program will start at 3:15 for all the attendees. So feel free, if you need to go get a drink of water, you got about 20 minutes here, and we'll be back. Thanks so much.